Think about all your smart devices for a second. Every click, every search, every step you take, they're constantly producing tiny bits of data. But where does it all go? Well, it doesn't just disappear into the cloud. It actually becomes the raw material for a massive, hidden economic system. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain on this information factory and show you exactly how it all works.
All right, let's start with a bit of a riddle. What does your car have in common with your search history? I know, it sounds totally random, right? But the answer gets right to the heart of our modern economy. Both of them are generating a constant stream of data. And that data? Well, it's become one of the most valuable products on the entire planet.
Okay, so to really get how this all works, you have to appreciate just how massive this whole data collection network is. You've probably heard of it, the Internet of Things, or IoT. And trust me, it is everywhere.
And I'm not kidding when I say everywhere. We're talking about the sensors that run traffic in our cities, the huge logistics networks that get you your packages. I mean, this isn't some niche tech anymore. It's literally the backbone of how our world works now.
And look, it's not just out there in the world. It's right here with us. It's the smartwatch on your wrist, the smart speaker in your living room. It's even in the systems that run our banks and track our health. The IoT has become super personal, and it's constantly collecting bits and pieces of our daily lives.
So, let's break it down. What is the Internet of Things exactly? When you get right down to it, it's a pretty straightforward idea. You've got this giant network of billions, yes, billions, of physical objects, and all these things have tiny sensors and software inside them that let them connect to the internet and just talk to each other, constantly exchanging data.
You know, this whole world of connected things didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It actually grew out of something older and way simpler, something called machine-to-machine communication. But the jump from that to the IoT we know today, wow, it was a huge leap, and honestly, it changed absolutely everything.
And this really shows you what I'm talking about. On the one hand, you had M2M. Think of it as a closed loop. A device talks to another device, the data gets used for one specific thing, and that's it. Story over. But then IoT came along and just blew that whole model wide open. Suddenly, you have this open marketplace where data isn't just used once. No way. It's reused, it's shared, it's mashed together in new ways to create all sorts of new stuff.
So, this big shift created a totally new kind of global economy, a new value chain. And maybe the best way to get your head around it is to imagine a classic factory assembly line. But instead of building, cars or phones, this assembly line is building information.
Right? We all know how this works. You start with your raw materials, wood, metal, whatever, and it goes down the line getting processed and put together until, at the very end, a finished product rolls off. It's pretty simple, pretty linear.
And boom, this is the new version. The source material calls this the information-driven global value chain, and it's a fantastic way to think about it. It's a brand new kind of assembly line, but now the raw materials aren't things like steel or cotton. The raw materials are data. Data from our devices, from sensors, from all those networks. This data is basically the new oil. It's the resource that's fueling the whole modern economy.
And this is the key takeaway. It's simple, but it is huge. We used to live in a world where data was just used to help sell a physical product. But we've completely flipped that. Now the data is the product. The thing being made and sold on this new assembly line is information itself.
Okay, so if this is a factory, who are the workers? Well, it's not people in hard hats on an assembly line. The workers here are massive corporations, and each one has a very specific job to do in this process of turning raw data into cold, hard cash.
This basically gives you the layout of the factory floor. You've got your data factories, your service providers, intermediaries, resellers, all these players. But look at the very beginning. What's the raw material that feeds this entire machine? End user information. Yep, that's you, that's me, we are the source.
So here's how the whole process works, more or less. First, you have the data factories. These guys create the basic stuff, like digital maps. Then you get the big data wholesalers, your Googles, your Metas, swooping in and collecting absolutely massive amounts of data from all over the world. After that, intermediaries step in to clean it up, maybe anonymize it to follow the law. And finally, you've got resellers who take all this data, bundle it up, and create these super targeted information products they can sell.
And this quote just nails their business model. Their entire game is collecting data from a global network, which includes all of us, by the way, and then turning it into something valuable they can sell. And when a few companies get this much control over the world's most valuable resource, well, that's exactly how you get what we call global information monopolies.
Which brings us to probably the most important part of this whole factory. and it's the part that's usually invisible. It's the one raw material that this entire system cannot function without, and that is you.
So where do you fit into all of this? It's a really important question because in this new system, you're not just a customer buying a product. Oh no. Your role is way more central than that. You're actually part of the manufacturing process.
I mean, the source material just says it perfectly. End users. We're not just passive consumers anymore. We are, quote, deeply embedded into the very process of production. Think about that. Every single time you use a connected device or a search engine or a social media app, you're basically punching the clock and working on this information assembly line.
Yeah, a good way to think about it is that you and your devices are kind of like subcontractors. Every Google search, every photo you post, every time your phone's GPS logs your location, that's a little active labor. You're constantly contributing these tiny bits of data that, when you add them all up, create a massive amount of value for these companies.
Let me walk you through a real-world example of how this plays out. Okay, so imagine you're in a clothing store. You try on a few things. The little tags on those clothes, plus your recent search history for that brand, plus your social media data, plus your phone's location. It all gets vacuumed up. This data gets crunched in what they call an information marketplace, and it actually creates two different products. The first one is for you, a personalized ad or recommendation. But the second product? That's an information product that gets sold. It's data about what people like you are doing, and they can sell that to other companies.
So when you stop and think about it, if information is the final product and our actual lives are the raw materials, it kind of forces you to ask a really big question, right? Like, what does value even mean in this new economy?
Okay, so let's just pull all this together and recap what this new reality looks like. First, the entire global economy is essentially being rebuilt around data. Second, we, the people using this stuff, are now a fundamental building block of the tech platforms. Third, all these little scattered pieces of our lives, where we go, what we buy, who we talk to, it's all being recorded and connected. And finally, this whole system is creating these giant information monopolies that control the flow of all this valuable data. And all of that leaves us with one last and really critical question to think about. We've seen how the factory is built. We know what the raw material is. It's us. So if your data, my data, our data is the fuel that makes this multi-billion-dollar engine run, then who should get to decide how that fuel is used?